What's going on, movie fans, and welcome back to my channel. Elliot here with a brand new review, and tonight we're talking about the new Godzilla x Kong, the new Empire, which I just walked in a house from seeing it in IMAX. I'm gonna make this kind of a short review, just give you all my pros and my cons and let you know if it's worth checking out. But before we get into my thoughts, let's start the conversation in the comments. Let me know if this is a film you all were excited to check out, but more importantly, once you've seen it, let me know your pros, your cons, and do you want to see more from the MonsterVerse? And also, if you've seen, I believe this is the 5th film in the MonsterVerse, rank them. Where do you place these movies? What's number 1? What's number 5? Let's have those conversations in the comments. So to kind of answer my own question, I like the MonsterVerse. I'm going to probably make like a quick short video in the next coming days, like ranking the films, but I enjoy them for what they're worth. And listen, just coming off of Godzilla Minus One, which is one of my favorite films of last year, and it's an Oscar-winning movie, which is crazy, but deservedly so. I went into this as like, you know what? That's the, 5-star restaurant type of approach towards Godzilla, kaiju, monster storytelling. And then this is kind of the fast food, grab something quick to eat at McDonald's type of approach. And that's no disrespect to those that love these films, because there is fun to be had. But just get into my thoughts, man. I'll be honest. This movie was okay. I think I probably prefer the one before, Godzilla vs. Kong, but I will talk about the positives first. Now, talking about the direction, you have Adam Wingard, who I've been a fan of since You're Next and The Guest. I think he's a wonderful director, especially in the horror genre, and I like that he is swinging for the fences, and I could applaud that, even though some of those swings are strikeouts, in my opinion. But as a science fiction fan, I enjoy how much Adam kind of plays into this weird science fiction world they've created within the MonsterVerse. We are mostly in the Hollow Earth, and we're exploring things like gravity and unknown civilizations and different kaiju monsters. So I like that even though it's wacky, I'm pretty sure that not all the science adds up, not all the math is mathing when it comes to just the technicality of everything. But I just appreciate how wacky and weird and sometimes campy and corny this film kind of dives into. So I think Adam is having fun. Like, while I was watching this movie, I thought to myself, this is like watching kids play with their toys, and watching kids play with their toys versus like a teenager playing with their toys or kind of venturing off from toys and getting into like video games, where Adam Wingard is like, he's smashing his toys together as a kid, but as you can see the sensibilities of the director, he has some nice moments of like, oh, that's a cool action set piece, that's an interesting character beat, an emotional threat. So like there's like evolutions to like a kid playing with the toys to them growing up and putting the toys away and kind of having a more cohesive understanding of how to make a film about monsters fighting each other and teaming up to fight a bigger threat. So Adam, if you want to do another one of these, I would welcome it, because you can tell he's a fan of the lore and the mythology and these characters, and you can also tell that he's just bringing in his fun to this franchise. So I do applaud him. As far as the kaiju monsters, who are the highlight of this film, one thing that has been a complaint for me and millions of audiences out there and fans is, listen, man, while you have a Bryan Cranston, Elizabeth Olsen, an Aaron Taylor Johnson, an Alexander Skarsgård, an Isa Gonzalez, Millie Bobby Brown, I mean, they have some Kyle Chandler, they have some amazing, Charles Dance, amazing actors in these movies, but man, get these human characters and their stupid ass stories out of these movies they've listed, because while there are humans, there is a smaller group of humans in this film. It's mostly the humans that you saw in the last film, Rebecca Hall, Brian Tyree Henry, and that little girl Gia. And then they add in I'm a big fan of Dan Stevens, so I'm always here for Dan Stevens. Legion, underrated movie. The Guest, or underrated show. The Guest, underrated movie. I'm a big Dan Stevens fan. So they kept the human story pretty condensed, and they all stayed together. We're not switching from this place, that place, trying to get the family drama. It's a human story that isn't that great, but it has a purpose in regards to kaiju and saving the world. So I was able to maintain interest in what the human story was going with. And I'll be honest, there's a little bit of heart. There's a little bit of emotional heart, because unlike the previous movies, they have a director that came back, and there's a through line that came back, and there's characters from one film to the next that has a through line that actually kind of has a bit of a payoff. So while the humans are annoying as hell, I will applaud the movie for distancing itself from the human story, and when it is focused on them, giving them something to do and having a little bit of a, this isn't Godzilla -1, but it has a little bit of emotional thread that I appreciated. But let's talk, and speaking of humans, Dan Stephen was a welcome cast member. I really enjoyed his character. Rebecca Hall's fine. The little girl Gia has a lot more to do, and I like her presence on screen. If you know me, you know how much I love Atlanta, so I'll never speak badly about Brian Tyree Henry, even though he was kind of annoying at points. Like, not all the jokes work, but I don't blame that on him. But again, humans fine. Let's put them away and talk about the kaiju. As a Godzilla fan, he got his moments in the last one. This is more of a Kong movie. But when we do cut to Godzilla, you stick with me here. The way I look at Godzilla, who's not in it as much, even though his presence is felt, I would say Godzilla's role in this film is kind of like Thor in Avengers Infinity War, where Thor was, getting his weapons and getting, Stormbreaker in preparation to take on Thanos. And you could kind of look at Godzilla in that way, where he's off doing his thing. He's doing some missions of his own and fighting some kaijus on his own, but then he's doing something for a purpose for the bigger threat, which brings me to Kong. I've always been a Godzilla fan, but I appreciated Kong. This was a Kong movie, y'all. Like, I had a fun time with him and his little side guy that follows him around, and how their relationship developed over the film, which in relation, again, this film is playing with some interesting story beats. There's a parallel of stories of Rebecca Hall and Gia, and if the way you look at Kong and this new little Kong of his, there's a through line. Like I said, Kong fans, you will be happy, because this is a Kong movie with a supporting role of Godzilla. Kong is doing some pretty awesome stuff. That gauntlet is badass. Him carrying his axe, him taking on multiple kaiju at points in his time. And I'll say this, when it comes to Godzilla and Kong, they're not on screen together as much as you might have think with the title, but when they are on screen together and when they're teaming up, there are some ridiculous things that they're doing together. But I would be lying if I said the kid in me was not disappointed in seeing some of those moments together, which brings me to just some final points. The action is pretty good for the most part. I would be lying if I said I didn't have fun. It takes a while for the film to find its footing, but when it did, and for me, the last 30 minutes is kind of that fun that I'm referring to. It's energetic. It all kind of comes together, and they just let these monsters do their thing. So there's fun to be had in this film. Negatively speaking, I don't need to say this as far as getting into depths, but the story is pretty messy, if I'm being honest with you. Again, the science of it all, wealth of it all, the governmental things that are going on with Monarch and the higher-ups trying to get involved, and things like, there's little story beats like they don't even bring back in, and just the idea of certain elements of how they're playing to Gia, her family history, and bringing that to the forefront. Some of those things, again, while it has, I think, a good emotional payoff, it takes a while for it to really find out what it's trying to do, because it takes us a while for the film to kind of find its footing, which, like I mentioned before. But my biggest issue with this movie is the scale. Like, I saw this in IMAX, which, if you're a big fan of the film, you probably bought your IMAX tickets, but I like the idea of Hollow Earth, but the thing about Hollow Earth is everything's big as far as the scope and scale, and we're climbing mountains and everything's upside down. So to me, it kind of makes Godzilla and Kong seem smaller. Of course, when they go to Earth, they look big compared to us humans and buildings, but I just felt the scaling was off. Like, it made them feel less threatening. I like that feeling of just like, this is bigger than life, bigger than anything you could ever imagine, and it just feels so small. So it was just like, while it was cool to be in Hollow Earth, it just made the characters not feel bigger than life as what I'm used to seeing them on the big screen, and especially in IMAX. And then another thing, the Scar King, if you saw the marketing and advertising of this film, the Scar King is kind of weak, kind of disappointing. Now, the Scar King, I won't give away too much, but there's elements that he has, resources, I'll just say that. And I like the resources that the Scar King has, but just him as an individual character, not as menacing as I was hoping to be. Now, there's a fight that goes on between Scar King and Kong that was pretty dope. I will admit that. But again, he had some help, but I'll just leave it at that. So Scar King was kind of disappointing. Like I said, man, the narrative is not the best. The script is not the best. And it takes a long time, at least for me, for the story to really pick up. Like, the first 30 minutes or so of this film, just like, what's the main thing? Because literally, going back to my Godzilla conversation, while he is a supporting character, it almost felt like there were like cutscenes with Godzilla. Like, Kong, the main story is through Kong. Like, everything that is like really based around the story is Kong's story. And then when we would cut over to Godzilla, it was like these quick cut scenes of him fighting something or sleeping or getting charged up. And it just didn't feel like, there's a lot of pieces that just didn't fit well, and it didn't pace well. And it's like an odd movement to this film. But again, once we hit a point where the characters are like, oh, Gia needs to do this and get involved in this, that's when the film is at its best. So that's about it. I said it was going to be quick, but it's just coming up on 10 minutes. But either way, should you see it? I don't need to tell you if you need to see it. If you've seen the previous Godzilla movies in the MonsterVerse, you're gonna see this anyway. But as far as will you be entertained, that's all up to the viewer. I had fun with it, but I can admit the flaws that it has, and I can give this film a solid, like a 3 out of 5. Like, it's not great, it's not bad, it's not terrible. It's just a movie that I think is aware of what it is, even though it sometimes gets a little bit too wacky, but a 3 out of 5. And if you do decide to see this, I think IMAX is the best way to see it, even though, like I said, I had some scaling issues with how they made the characters kind of feel a little bit smaller than what I would have liked them to see them on this format. So that's my thoughts on Godzilla X Kong. Let me know what you all thought of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. They open the door for more, and again, if Adam wants to come back for more, I will be open to it. And we're getting closer and closer to, again, less humans, more kaiju, and I'm pretty sure that if they do make another one, it's going to probably be primarily in Hollow Earth and barely going back to Earth. So that's my thoughts, y'all. Thank you for watching today's review. Again, make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, like, share, do all that fun stuff. Consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel. You all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.